It is cold out there, and you look out there, and it's easy to understand why there's a lot of people that deal with, there's a rise in things like depression during times like this. Because you look out there and you don't see a whole lot of life out there. One thing I'd like to remind us all, though, is that just below the surface are things living that are just getting ready to erupt into something beautiful. And they can't do it on their own. Seeds are funny. You ever just try to put a seed out on the cement and just say, okay, go with God? It doesn't work that way. What we need is to have the different elements come together and work together. Life itself depends so much on the sharing of things. Without the seed having the water and the soil and the nutrients, nothing will happen out there. But what we're seeing just below the surface out there right now on a cold day like this are things coming together. There's nutrients. And within that nutrients is even a shared molecules and everything. You can't just say nutrients is one thing. It is multiple things. Water, soil. I kind of like to think of that as when I think of neighbors. At first glance, some people will walk in here and they'll say, oh, it's a cute little small church you have, kind of a storefront thing. Kind of odd, kind of weird, because it's not really churchy church or anything like that. It doesn't look like what we're used to, but we are just a small little seed. And the fact that everybody comes in here, you guys are the nutrients of what makes this thing happen. Without it, there's nothing. And so I am so grateful that even in the cold weather, where it is so easy to just say, the door is closed, that you give us reason to open ours. I'm so grateful and thankful for that. Because it's what we share that makes us make a difference in the world today. On a financial side of this, I just want to let you know that when you donate to neighbors, and I'm grateful for that, big or small, whatever it takes. That's not my point. This isn't it. We're not starting another campaign. But I just want to thank you because when you give to neighbors, we pay the bills, we keep us running, we keep us surviving, but we also are aimed at taking the message of loving God, loving ourselves, and loving our neighbor outside our doors. By you guys donating here, we were able to make a donation to South Street Temple so that they can help rebuild after some great vandalism has happened over there. Our neighbors and friends are harmed, and we, because of who we are, share with them who we are. Because also I know that they would do the same thing for us. And so I just want to thank you. And you can actually, when you drive by South Street, you can know that you may not ever go into that temple. You may never know personally some of the people, but know that the reach of who we are is being shared. And that's important. It's very important when we realize that the things that we are and the things that we share of ourselves, we will never fully understand how far that reach is. Jesus was nearing Jerusalem. Jesus had a fantastic way of being in the moment. He could gauge the people that were around him, and he knew the people that were around him. Sometimes we find ourselves in situations where we are doing things and we're not actually here. We're not actually with people. We might be physically with people, but our mind might be somewhere else. Jesus reminds us of the importance of stopping and being present. If I were addicted to my pad or phone or anything like that, I would miss the beauty of people around me. I would miss the beauty of the nutrients that helps me grow. And Jesus knew that. He looked out and then he saw the people that were around him. I always say he looked out. He looked right next to him. He's not like on a stage. He's not broadcasting. He is right there, and people are around him. And he knows that he has people that love him and want to hear more from him, and there are people that hate him and want him to die. But he also knows that his time on earth is limited. The closer he gets to Jerusalem, the sooner he knows that in the physical presence, he will be changing. And he knows, very importantly, that it is up to the people that are around him right in that present time to carry that message forward. Jesus, even without us, is kind of like the seed. He needs us as well to carry that message forward, the message of love. Imagine where it would be if the word of what Christ was teaching died on that cross. Where would we be today? It's hard to imagine that just in a word-of-mouth campaign 2,000 years ago, that we are here meeting in this place talking about them then and us today and making that connection. We are sharing something with our ancestors of 2,000 years ago because people back then were willing to share it then. Isn't that amazing? Nobody texted, nobody Twittered, nobody did whatever the heck they do there. They just told people and they shared who they were with those people. Christianity is a very one-on-one relationship. And it's that one-on-one that builds a community, and that community is what changes the world. That I fully believe. And Jesus is around, and he sees all these guys over there. And he tells this story. He says, there was this guy that was going to inherit a kingdom. Sound familiar? He's talking about himself there. And he said he had 10 servants. And he gave each one of those servants the equivalent of like a gold piece. And he told his servants, what I want you to do is I want you to do business with that and grow it. And I'll be back. Now, there were some people that didn't want him to come back. There were some people that didn't like who he was. But the people that worked for him, they got to work. And he came back, and he goes up to his servants, and he says, how'd it go with the stuff that I gave you? And one of them says, I took your gold piece and I invested it. And now I've turned that one gold piece into 10 gold pieces. And the guy said, that's fantastic. Just for getting 10 more, what you get is I'm going to put you in charge of 10 cities. That's a huge thing. He goes to the next guy, and the next guy says, well, I didn't do that as good as that, but I did invest it, and I worked with it, and I have, for the one piece that you gave me, I have 5 pieces. And he said, fantastic. Boom, 5 cities. You get to be in charge of 5 cities. And he goes to another guy. And that guy just said, I was scared to share what I had. So I just held it. And I put it under a handkerchief just to keep it safe. But nothing happened. And all I have is the one that you gave me. The master became irate at this. He said, I gave you something to invest. You couldn't have even put it into a bank and gained interest. What I gave you, you did not share. And because of that, I'm taking the one that you have, and I'm going to give it to the one that earned 10. And everyone around him is saying, well, how come the guy that earned the most suddenly gets that one too? And he said, because the people that invest the most, they earn the most. A lot of people like to use this as what we call prosperity gospel, which is nonsense. They like to manipulate you and say that the more that you give to a church, the more money that you're going to make. That's not what Jesus was talking about at all. Let's look at what the word investment actually means. Investment actually means, if you tear it down to the most simplistic form, it's sharing. It's sharing. When you invest in something, you share part of what you have with something else, and it grows. That's what the message that Jesus was trying to tell us back then is, I am going to build the kingdom. Your job right now is to take this knowledge, to take this love, to take who I am and share it with the world. And with that, I want you to also share who you are. I don't want you to become something different. I want you to take who you are and that love that I have for you and just tell other people about it. That's what started the church. The church is not something where people come in and they just listen to some guy spewing things, and then we just go home and forget about it. And we talk about the donuts, but we don't talk about anything else. The church is an investment. The church is an investment where each and every one of us comes in and we bring a part of who we are and we plant that seed and we add to it and we grow it. That's what church is. And why do we do this? It's not for material goods. It's not to give people money or write checks. It's to spread the love of Jesus Christ. That's why we're here. We're in a world where people really need the love of Jesus Christ. Maybe more so now in my lifetime than I've seen in a long time. We seem to be in a world right now where people have permission to express hatred. We seem to be where acts that happen like to the South Street Temple are encouraged. We seem to be in a world where people are made fun of and bullied more than I have ever seen before. We've seen, rather than conversations started, we see lines divided. It's very much like it was in Jesus' time in the first century. People hated the people that Jesus was talking to, and they hated them. And the thing that Jesus was promoting was not hatred, but peace. The thing that Jesus was promoting, the secret weapon that Jesus had then is the same secret weapon that we have now, and that is meeting hatred with love. We're told in our world that that doesn't work. We laugh at things like love your neighbor and things like that. We put them in children's books, but we don't really talk about them in our adult world because we're supposed to grow out of that. And if somebody has a different viewpoint of this, we're supposed to hate that person and not try to pray for that person. We're not supposed to bring Jesus into the conversation. I'm begging us right now to bring Jesus into our conversations, to share who we are and to share that love with the rest of the world, because that is exactly what the world is begging for. If we're not, then who is? When we come together, we build a church with a mission of not condemning our neighbor or not telling someone else that they're different from us, but celebrating each of every uniqueness that we have in this world. When we do that, when we share who we are, we can truly make a difference. Not a difference that leaves anybody feeling harmed, but a difference that makes everybody feel celebrated and loved. Around World War II, there was a gentleman that wanted to make a difference. He saw people like him that were being mistreated, and he wanted to do something about it. Years later, he met up with some more people And in 1963, they started to actually have conversations, more conversations. This gentleman from the 40s met somebody from the 60s, and they shared their ideas. They shared their experiences, they shared their stories, and they shared who they were. They got together with someone else. They got together with a person that was a minister, that in his whole heart of hearts believed in nonviolence approach, believed that the world was not perfect and things needed to change, but he wasn't going to change them by violence. He was going to do what we do. He was going to do what God tells us to do, and to change them by love. And they started to have a little bit of a buzz of a story going on. And they took their story to some other people. And they started doing these acts of nonviolence. And one of the people that they shared it with even got beaten so bad that they thought that he was going to die. But he refused to fight violence with violence. He refused to meet hatred with hatred. He fought to share the love of Christ with the world, to share himself with the world, even where places said he could not share it. Together, they teamed up with a guy that was considered a minority in many ways. Minority of race, also a minority of lifestyle. He was African American and he identified as gay. And they shared their ideas with him too. And he had great organizational skills. And together they shared their selves, who they were, their unique abilities, their stories, their talents, their struggles with other people. And it started to spread beyond their inner circle. It started to spread beyond their race. It started to spread beyond their lifestyles. It started a movement of people that felt what Christ was telling us in the beginning was that we cannot meet violence with violence and we cannot meet hatred with hatred, but what we can do is meet the world with love. And together, we can change that world. The minister that they brought on, he was asked to, among many people, they decided that they were going to get everyone together. They were going to bus them. Some were going to walk. And they were going to meet in Washington, D.C. And they had a big, big event planned. And this minister that was starting to get pretty darn popular and telling his story and sharing the stories of other people, he was asked to be among many of the people that were going to be speaking there. They had musicians, they had people that were playing, and they had several people that were talking. But before they started talking, there was an argument, and the argument was over the order of who was going to speak when, because nobody wanted to go last. Because they thought that if you go last, then the media will already have left, and you won't get in your soundbite. You won't make the front page, and you won't be in the news. But the religious guy, well, see, he remembered Jesus Christ saying that the first shall be last and the last shall be first, and he said, I'll go last. I'll be the last one. And they said, good, you got 4 minutes, because we got to keep a tight schedule here. He said, that's fine. And he worked on the whole time that other people are speaking and stuff, he brought this speech that he wrote. And he's ready. It's timed for 4 minutes, and he's ready to go. And he gets up there. The day has passed. There's been music. There has been all this kind of stuff. And there has been also police ready for violence, and it never, ever happened. They're shocked by this. Thousands of people. and no acts of violence. His turn finally comes up. He's one of the he's the dead last person in a full sea of singers and speechwriters and all of this kind of stuff. And he gets up there with his prepared speech. But as he starts, there was a gospel singer, very famous gospel singer that actually played earlier in that day, and she is just over here behind him. And she yells to him before he's starting his written speech that he had planned. Tell him about the dream. Tell him about the dream. That's all she kept saying. Tell him about the dream. Because in an earlier couple of days, in a newspaper article, he had expressed this one saying that he had a dream of civilization being together and being unified, where hatred didn't exist. It wasn't on his speech. His speech was what it was supposed to be. It was timed at 4 minutes, but she kept saying, tell them about the dream. And he did for 14 minutes. And nobody moved. Every reporter stayed. And today, that's the one thing that we probably remember most of something that happened, because someone shared who they were with another person, and it grew. Because somebody in a world of hatred planted a seed. Because somebody, regardless of race, lifestyle, income, of who they were, knew that if they were together, they could be something phenomenal. They did this. Individually, we are very special people loved by God. When we share that, we become the church. And when we become the church, we change the world. Amen.